Oh, we just lost Frank, but that's okay. I'm going to say, welcome. My name is Neil Thrussell, and I'm really excited to have Frank Moffatt with us, who's an international best-selling author, motivational speaker, lifestyle coach, music producer, movie producer, and founder of Your Second 50. Welcome, Frank. So, are you in Bali or in Malaysia?
I'm actually in Thailand.
Oh my, you keep moving around.
Well, I thought I was going to be in Bali, but now I'm in Thailand, and I was like, so the time is different. Like it's 7:30 in the morning here right now, so it's good.
Oh, well, my first guest, no, one of my guests was up at 3:30 in the morning. So so welcome. I met Frank through a group called Evolutionary Business Council many years ago, and I was part of his your second 50 group, but you've done many things since then. By the sounds of it, you keep moving and keep retiring.
Yeah. Well, I think the latter is probably never going to happen. Oh, listen, we can hear the monks singing in the background. This is one of the great things about Thailand. The people love to crank their music, including the monks. So anyway, yeah, it's just one thing about life that I've found is you just want to keep moving. I mean, I don't really know where my final trajectory is. I don't really have a clue. I just know that as long as I can keep moving forward, things are pretty good. But uh, when we're talking about this success thing, one thing that popped into my mind last night was, I think success is really finding happiness in what you do. And I mean, I've had all kinds of monetary success and different successes, but I got to tell you, I think if you're happy doing whatever you're doing, because when you're in a country like Thailand and you walk down the street and a little old lady with maybe two teeth left smiles at you and offers you her last bit of rice, you think, well, I think she's successful. I think she's successful. Yeah, she's right there. So yeah, and I think that
So
that's one of the keys too. Is I think we're always looking to find that something that's going to validate us as a person, right? Whether it's whatever. And I think that what we really need to know is that we're probably okay the way we are. Now, some of us have a fire to achieve more. I don't think I could. I don't think I could be that old lady and sit there and just sell rice. I don't think that's who I am. But it's not a negative reflection on her, and hopefully, it's not a negative reflection on me. So yeah, I think that we're onto a good subject here.
so I remember us talking at one point in time, and I think it was in Bragg Creek. You were living in Bragg Creek, and you had this beautiful house, and you're looking at out at the expanse. Your boys were doing wonderful, and you just went to yourself and went something like, "Is this it? Is this the pinnacle?"
Right.
And then what was that like? What were you thinking you were experiencing at that point in time? Like it was like you said you had something shifted in you, that there was something not right, or you wanted more. What do you think that was?
I've thought about that and I put a bit of time into that. And I think one of the things that happened in my life at that moment was, you know, I was sitting there and thinking, my gosh, I mean, I have everything. I mean, everything that you could ask for. And if I don't have it, I could certainly go buy it. And I thought to myself, but then why am I not happy? And I think that, I witnessed this with a friend that was struggling with his wife the other day. And, if we're not internally happy and happy with who we are, it really doesn't matter what we have. I mean, we could keep hoping that that next thing is going to make us happy, but that key is really to find that happiness in yourself, and I think that that goes to another level where when I went when I left at that time and I went overseas to Thailand, I learned to become a teacher, an English teacher, and I actually took it further, and I ended up becoming the general manager of that company. And one of the interesting things was we're only happy with ourselves when we're helping others. I mean, it's impossible to be happy with me because I can never attain what this wild imagination drums up. So if I'm helping other people, I can find a happiness because I'm out of my ego and I'm out of me and I'm focused on them. And I mean, a lot of people maybe don't get that, but I in my life, I seek to find that opportunity to help where I know that I can assist someone to improve their life or uh, in some way help them find their ability to assist their life. Uh, I was thinking also yesterday before we came on this. There's this funny story. You've probably heard it. A Mexican guy. He's down there, an old Mexican guy, and every day he gets up and he goes in his boat and he goes fishing, right? And there's this guy from New York, this big executive that's looking out his balcony and he watches this Mexican fisherman get into his boat at 6 o'clock in the morning, go out and come back at 2 o'clock every day. And he comes back with two fish. And he watches him for a week, and finally he decides he's going to go down and help this guy out. He goes down and he says to the guy, listen, if you would go and catch four fish, pretty soon you would have enough money to buy a second boat. And then after you bought a second boat, you could buy a third boat and a fourth boat. Well, after a couple of years, this little Mexican fisherman's got a fleet and he's got a canning boat right there right out there, So he's got everything going for him. I mean, the whole thing's just cooking. And so one day the guy from New York comes back and he walks up to him on the beach and he goes, wow, this is amazing. I mean, you've got all these boats, you've got this canning thing, you've got everything's going for you. And the Mexican looks at him and goes, and so what is this all about? And the New York businessman says, well, once you've got all this going, you could get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go out fishing, catch a couple fish, and come home and relax for the rest of the day. And I mean, that's so us as people. Now, I mean, you're talking about the boys. Well, right now, I mean, they're just cranking it. I mean, they're doing way better than when they were with me. I can tell you that much. And it's really fun because I was just out on the road with Bob and Clint, who go under the name Music Travel Love, and I mean, they're definitely top 5 travel influencer right now on YouTube, and we ran into a couple of shady promoters, and I watched how they dealt with these promoters. They didn't get angry. They were totally calm, totally rational. And the one guy even said, listen, I'm going to go get the money for you. And they looked at him and they said, listen, even if you go get $50,000, we're not going to do the show because you were dishonest and unethical with our dad when you were negotiating this show. And we're not going to work with people like that in our life. And I looked at him and I went, Frank Moffatt, you have success. Your boys are amazing human beings. That is success to me. Now, people would say, well,
Yeah, and
really?
that's for our viewers and listeners. You need to go back to if you're unfamiliar, you need to go back to the 90s and look at the Moffatts, because I know in Canada and various parts of the world they were huge. They were a boy band and Miss You Like Crazy. They had a string of hits. So now that they're older, what Frank has just shared with us is that they've carried, whether whoever however they've got this, they carried this ethical gene in them. So that in itself, so whether it was Frank, whoever gave this part of them into that, they carried it forward as their version of success. So job well done if that was what you instilled in them, Frank.
Well, I mean, when when they were little kids and we were traveling and they were like 10 and 11, they had to listen to Wayne Dyer and, they had to listen to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. They listened to all this stuff. I'm driving around, I'm brainwashing them with all this stuff, Deepak Chopra. And, I'll tell you what else is interesting. When I talk about ethics, so Scott, um, he produced this guy named Luke Combs. I mean, they met in a back alley. A friend of Scott said, "Hey, could you produce this guy?" And Scott said, "Well, I'm really not. I just came back from Thailand. I was producing these acts over there." And he had massive success in Asia. And he looked at this Luke Combs, and Luke said, "Here's one of my demos or something." And Scott listened to him and said, "You know what? Let's give it a shot." And Luke said, "But I don't have any money." And Scott said, "Well, that's okay. We'll do it pro bono. I mean, or you can give me a few $100, whatever." So Scott produced Luke Combs. Luke Combs is now the biggest act in North America by far. And, Luke makes millions of dollars every night. And Scott was asked to he produced the first two records. And they produced a record. They have the first 12 number one hits for an artist in a row. I mean, Garth Brooks doesn't have that. The Beatles don't have that. I mean, all of the records in the industry belong to Luke Combs and Scott. And what Scott said was, when they went to do the third record, Scott said, "I'm tired. And in order to make a great record, you really need to spend time on a great record. And I really need a little bit of a break." And they said, "Well, we got to get this out." And Scott walked away from that, which I don't know too many people that could walk away from millions and millions and millions of dollars because of the ethical value of music. Like he asked me, "What do you think?" And I said, you know, for me, Scott, I might produce one more record, and see what I can make out of it. But I said, it's your call. And I mean, they call him now in the Billboard magazine the reluctant producer, okay? Because he's reluctant to produce anyone, but if he produces them, they become megastars. And so he's an interesting character. But I guess I got the opportunity to spend time with all of them this summer, and three of them are parents now, and I watch them with their kids, and they're good. They take them to hockey practice, and here are these superstars, and they're right out there at hockey practice, and they keep to themselves, and they're not noisy parents in the crowd. They watch their son, and then they talk to him about the game, or it's fun to watch this kind of stuff go on. And I really say that, to be honest, that would be my greatest success. I could
Wonderful
get
thing.
emotional.
And it's probably the grandfather that's probably the noisy one in the crowd at the hockey games.
He would be, but he's only watched practices. Imagine some kid
So,
cross-checking his grandchild. Holy mackerel.
so I love that you brought integrity in. So we can pick anyone in the genre. We can say Luke Combs. What do you think? Because he's uber successful. He's got a great producer, your son. But what made him? Do you think that he took him from somebody in the back alley to ultra success? What do you think was that piece that helped him besides your son?
I think Luke Combs is like that Sheeran guy, Ed Sheeran. I think that
Yep.
these two guys knew what they wanted. And I think when you know what you want, the pieces of the puzzle will fall into place. And one of those pieces was Scott. But I think Luke knew what he wanted. And if you want to be successful in life, for me, anybody wanted to talk to me about success, the first thing I would say is find out what you love to do and do that. Because that is the one thing that will keep you going when the shit hits the fan. I mean, when things aren't working, if you love what you're doing, you'll keep going. And you know, I watch so many people try to grab that, that magical thing and say, oh, this will work because it works for them. No, it won't. It's got to come out of the heart, and you've got to love what you're doing. I mean, it's easy for me to manage my boys. I mean, you love your kids. I mean, it's easy to do this. It's not always easy to negotiate some of the deals, but for me, I love my kids. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say I'm the biggest music guy in the world. And before, when they were playing sports, I wouldn't say I was the biggest sports guy. But whatever I do, I want to jump in 100%, and I want to give it 100%, and I want to make sure that no matter what happens, when I walk away, I know I've done my best. And I mean, that's every little letter. If I write a letter to somebody, I'm double check, triple check, quadruple check. I don't just write something and send it off. And I mean, this is the way I write. I mean, uh, Unia would always say, if people realized that you've written 6 books with 2 fingers, they would appreciate what you do a lot more. So,
I appreciate, because lots of times that's what I'm typing with. So I truly appreciate and recognize. And I can't believe that we're almost at 20 minutes here. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we could go on for another 2, 3 hours, because what I know about Frank is he's never short of words and there's always a story. And that's what I love about Frank. But if you could leave our audience with some last words on success, what would you like to leave our audience and our viewers with?
find what you love. It'll keep you happy. And if you're happy, you're successful. That's it.
Ooh, that's chills. So I want to thank you for getting up at 7 or before 7:30 in the morning, and being and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with me. And
And,
so
and
thank
on
you,
my,
Frank.
I'm putting on my best Tommy Bahama. So,
So
oh,
thank you very much, Frank.
thanks, Neil. It was
And,
great.
you know, you know,
Thanks. Take care.